She said I looked like hotel staff while I was zipping up her $8,000 dress. Florence, Italy. The summer air was thick with heat and white orchids. Outside the window, golden light spilled across the marble terrace, where guests sipped champagne and posed for the drone camera. Inside, I was on my knees, not out of reverence, just helping my sister into her gown. The zipper caught halfway delicate French lace straining around her back. I moved carefully, aware that a single snag could ruin the couture. I barely breathed. Then she turned to her bridesmaids, a cluster of perfect bodies in dusty rose satin, and laughed. Oh, thank God the hotel sent someone up to help. I was starting to panic. There was a beat of silence. Then wait, never mind. It's just my sister. Laughter followed, light, cruel, effortless. I didn't speak. I didn't flinch. I just finished the zipper, smoothed the fabric, and stepped back as if I hadn't just been mistaken, or worse, presented as the help at my own sister's $200,000 wedding. She didn't look at me again. She was too busy admiring herself in the mirror, adjusting the veil, rehearsing the smile she'd wear down the aisle. She looked stunning. She always did. And me, I was invisible as usual. A blur in the corner. The sister who wasn't asked to give a speech. The one not listed on the program. The one in the simple ivory dress that made her look like staff. But I smiled. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't staying in one of the guest rooms. I wasn't even staying at the same resort. In exactly 11 minutes, the hotel manager would walk into that room, scan the crowd, and say 7 words that would split the silence wide open. "Ma'am, your penthouse is ready now." Until one day, years later, I watched her pose in the mirror veil, flowing diamonds catching the light, and I realized something chilling. To her, I was still the girl who held the pins, but I wasn't her shadow anymore. And soon, she would see it. Growing up, there were 2 kinds of daughters in our house. My sister was the golden girl. Pageant crowns on her bedroom shelf, straight A's. Homecoming queen. The one Mom called our pride in front of dinner guests. The one Dad proudly introduced as my firstborn, my star. And me, I was the one holding the camera, adjusting the lighting. The one making sure everyone had napkins at the table. The one blending into the background so well, I became part of the furniture. Useful. Silent. Forgotten. No one ever said it out loud. But I wasn't the daughter they dressed up for display. I was the one who ironed the display's clothes. At family gatherings, I was always there, always helping. But when the printed invitations went out, my name was rarely listed. Sometimes I'd find out about the event only when Mom asked me to come early and help set the tables. My sister's birthdays were production-themed decorations, photographers and catered desserts. Mine. A text, sometimes a cupcake, once an email gift card that turned out to have 0 balance. Mom blamed the system glitch, but even glitches need someone to forget you first. In school, the comparisons never stopped. If she got a 97, it was framed and hung in the kitchen. If I got a 97, it was, "Why didn't you get 100? Your sister would have. She was the front-facing portrait on the family Christmas card. I was the one taking the photo. Once Dad asked me to step out of a shot because we don't want to crowd the frame. I remember that moment clearly, not because it hurt most, but because by then I'd already stopped expecting to be seen. By the time we reached our teens, she became the official face of our family, the one invited to Gala's youth ambassador events and fundraisers. I was told to drive her there, not attend, just drive. Even at church, people would walk up to her and say, "You must be the eldest." She'd smile politely, never correcting them. I never did either. What was the point? They called her graceful. They called me dependable. She was radiant. I was reliable. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't make a sound, the kind that sinks deep and quiet like dust settling on glass. Eventually, you stop trying to wipe it away. You just learn to see through it. I never confronted my parents about it. What would I say? Why do you love her more? They'd laugh. We love you both the same. And maybe in their minds they do. But love isn't just in what you feel. It's in who you choose to celebrate. And they chose her. Over and over again. When she got into Stanford, there was a family dinner with champagne. When I got into NYU with a partial scholarship, they said, Well, it's not Ivy, but it's still something. They paid her full tuition without blinking. I took out loans, quietly, gratefully. She had summers abroad, Spain, France, a semester in Florence. I had part-time jobs, bookstore, cafe, and a short stint folding towels at a gym where she worked out. Even in adulthood, nothing changed. At my cousin's wedding, she was seated at the main table next to the bride. I was behind the DJ booth, holding extra favors. When our grandmother passed, the family photo displayed on the memorial table only had one granddaughter in it. Guess who took the picture? Still, I smiled through it. I held the coats, took the candids, picked up the takeout. Because if I didn't, who would? The irony is, I didn't resent her. Not in the sharp, bitter way people think siblings do. I didn't want her spotlight. I just wanted to know what it felt like to be seen in the light. But I learned early that quiet girls don't get center stage. They get handed clipboards and are told to make sure things run smoothly. So I became the organizer, the planner, the fixer. And later, the one they all turned to when things fell apart, but never the one they toasted when things came together. It took me years to realize being useful isn't the same as being valued. Being reliable isn't the same as being cherished. And being present doesn't mean you're truly invited. Somewhere between their neglect and my sister's shine, I started to fade, not by accident, but by design. I made myself smaller, so she could shine brighter, so my parents wouldn't have to squint. And I did it so well for so long. Even I forgot what I looked like in the mirror. Until one day, years later, I watched her pose in the mirror, veil flowing, diamonds catching the light, and I realized something chilling. To her, I was still the girl who held the pins, but I wasn't her shadow anymore, and soon she would see it. I left when I was 20. No big announcement, no fight, no screaming match, no door slam, just a silent suitcase at 3 a.m. A one-way ticket and a note on the fridge, gone to figure things out. Love you. I didn't expect them to chase me, and they didn't. There was no follow-up call, no comeback, just quiet. The kind that told you you weren't missing from anyone's life. You were just removed. I landed in a city where no one knew my last name. I shared a one-bedroom with 2 strangers and slept on the sofa for nearly a year. The cushions sagged, the springs creaked, but it was mine. I enrolled in business school by day, cleaned office lobbies at night, and did freelance design gigs whenever I could get a signal on my cracked phone. 16-hour days, instant ramen, secondhand shoes, no safety net, no trust fund, just stubbornness and silence. At first, I wanted to prove them wrong, to show them I was more than the girl who held the pins, but somewhere along the way, that need burned out. And what was left was something quieter, something truer. I fell in love with building, seeing something go from nothing to almost something. Hearing my first client say, "I love what you made," with checked the numbers at 2 a.m. and realized we had just broken even for the first time. I started a tech fashion company, a strange hybrid between sustainable clothing and predictive software for sizing and wear longevity. People thought it was cute at first, then clever, then valuable. 3 years later, we raised a Series B round. We were valued at $40 million. I didn't post about it. No press release, no LinkedIn brag. I signed the paperwork quietly, ordered sushi, took a long bath. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't even tell my sister. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't need to be seen anymore. I already knew who I was. And when the wedding invitation arrived, white envelope, gold trim, her full name in calligraphy mine scribbled in as an afterthought, I sat on my couch for a long time staring at it. Not out of hurt, not anymore. It was curiosity, really. Curious about how little had changed on their side of the story. She was still the golden daughter, still center stage, and I was still the blurred edge of the family portrait. I could have said no, could have RSVP'd, can't make it, and gone back to my deadlines, my team, my life. But I didn't. I said yes. I said yes because something inside me wanted to walk back into that world, not to rub anything in their faces, but to stand there fully myself and know that they wouldn't recognize me, not because I'd changed, but because they'd never actually looked at me before. I booked my own flight, my own room, a penthouse suite at the Partner Hotel. Not because I needed luxury, but because I could. And because I liked the view. I didn't ask to be in the bridal party. I wasn't shocked when I wasn't. I chose a dress that didn't draw attention. A simple silhouette, clean lines, ivory silk, quiet elegance. No tags, no logos. No need to explain to the designer. The morning of the wedding, I arrived early. I helped zip her dress, smoothed her veil, smiled politely at the bridesmaids who barely remembered my name. They saw what they always saw. The quiet sister, the helper, the maid almost, and I let them. Because sometimes the sweetest kind of revenge is not revenge at all. It's presence. It's showing up in the skin you built for yourself and watching the people who once overlooked you squint in confusion because something about you feels different, but they can't quite name it. They think it's the dress, or maybe the hair. They never suspect it's the spine, that it's not what you're wearing, it's how you stand. So I stood. For the ceremony, for the photos, for the sister who once said, "You're good at the behind-the-scenes stuff." And she was right. I had been behind the scenes until I built my stage. And now I didn't need an audience. They thought I was staying with the rest of the family in one of the standard suites blocked off for guests. I wasn't. I booked a penthouse at a resort 3 buildings down with a private terrace, its elevator and blackout privacy requests tied to my name. No fanfare, no announcement, just a room that overlooked the villa where her wedding would unfold glittering like a stage below. It wasn't about being flashy, it was about having space and the view. I arrived 2 days early, not to mingle, not to catch up with family. I came to prepare, not for them, but for myself. I hired my stylist, a woman named Delia who'd worked backstage at Fashion Week. She didn't ask questions when I requested simplicity. Nothing loud, I said. Nothing that screams, just elegance that doesn't ask permission. She nodded and brought in a seamstress and a traveling skincare tech. The morning of the ceremony, I didn't go to the bridal suite. Not right away. Delia met me at the penthouse with a pressed dress bag and a soft smile. She poured me tea while my makeup was done. No contouring, no bright lipstick, just clean, quiet beauty. The dress she had tailored for me was ivory silk, bias cut, no branding, no embellishments. But the moment I stepped into it, I felt its weight not from fabric, but from intent. It was Ralph and Russo couture, a silent masterpiece. I didn't ask how much she paid. I didn't need to. I paid Delia generously and thanked her like I always do, eye contact, both hands, no assumptions. The shoes were vintage. The necklace my design from a limited line I never released. A piece I created on a night I'd almost given up. I wore it not to prove anything. I wore it to remember how far I'd come. As I stepped into the waiting car, my phone buzzed. A message from the discreet PR photographer I'd hired weeks before. Already on location. Light is perfect. Just waiting for your cue. I'd found her on a whisper network of women-owned media freelancers, women who understood subtlety. Her instructions were simple. No staged shots. No poses. Just document the moment I walked across the courtyard as if it were an accident. As if I belonged there all along. Because I did. I arrived at the venue 10 minutes before the ceremony. Guests were already seated, music humming in the background. I didn't try to make an entrance. I walked slowly, cutting across the edge of the garden on my way to the rear guest seating. I smiled politely at anyone who looked up. And when the camera clicked softly from across the lawn once, twice, I didn't even glance over. I wasn't here to be seen, but I knew I would be. And the ones who needed to notice me would. When I entered the villa's side entrance, one of the groomsmen assumed I was hotel staff. He asked if I knew where the extra programs were. I said I didn't. Not cold, not rude, just honest. He didn't ask again. A few minutes later, I walked into the bridal suite. My sister was adjusting her veil, surrounded by bridesmaids and champagne. Someone was taking selfies. Someone else was fixing the hem of her dress. No one noticed me at first. And that was fine. It gave me time to see her clearly. The way she smiled when the camera was on the way. Her eyes narrowed when it was off. She looked beautiful, radiant, just as she always had. "Hey," I said quietly. She turned, startled. "Oh, I didn't see you come in. Didn't want to interrupt," I said. For a second, something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, confusion? Something else she quickly buried. "You look nice," she said, eyes flicking down to my dress. "Simple. I like simple," I replied. She smiled thinly and handed me a safety pin. "Can you help with this?" I nodded. Of course I could. I always had. As I bent slightly to fix her train, one of the bridesmaids whispered behind her flute of rosé, "Wow, you two don't even look related." I didn't flinch. That kind of comment used to gut me. Now it just floated past like white noise in a room I no longer lived in. I finished pinning her train, then stepped back. And in that moment she said it, the line that would echo. "Oh, good," she laughed. "Now I don't have to call housekeeping." A few of the bridesmaids giggled. One looked away uncomfortable. I didn't say a word. I just checked the time. In 4 minutes, the hotel manager would walk through that door. He'd be looking for me, not her. And when he said it loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Ma'am, your penthouse is ready now," no one would laugh. Because sometimes the best entrance is the one they didn't see coming. And sometimes the best power is the kind that doesn't ask for attention. It just takes its place in the room. It started with a laugh, not a cruel one, not obviously. It was the kind of laugh women use when they're showing off without seeming to. Light, effortless, just sharp enough to cut but dull enough to deny. "She's my maid," my sister said, gesturing toward me. "Isn't she cute?" Her bridesmaids laughed, some politely, some too loudly. One of our aunts chuckled and sipped her wine. I didn't react, not because it didn't sting, but because I no longer bled for her. I smiled, softly, not tight-lipped or fake, just a smile, the kind that comes from already knowing how the story ends. There was a beat of silence just long enough for the echo of her words to settle. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate, leather against marble tile. The hotel manager stepped into the bridal suite, impeccably dressed, discreet, but not quite. He scanned the room, then fixed his gaze on me. His voice was warm but formal, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Ma'am," he said with a slight bow, "your penthouse is ready. We've chilled the Moët as requested. Shall I have your driver wait downstairs?" The air in the room changed. No one moved. A bridesmaid blinked. Someone set down their flute of rosé too fast. The crystal rang like a warning bell. My sister froze. She didn't look at me. She looked at him, then at me, then at the way he addressed me, not with familiarity, but with deference. I could see the question forming in her mind. What penthouse? What driver? What Moët? She hadn't asked those questions in years because she hadn't had to. She'd always assumed I had nothing she didn't already own twice over. Now, for the first time, she wasn't sure. The silence stretched. It wasn't awkward. It was authoritative, like a verdict that didn't need a judge. I turned to the manager, nodded once. "Give me 2 minutes." He bowed again and left as quietly as he'd entered, but not before offering my sister a neutral smile. Not cruel, not kind, just aware. I faced her, not aggressively, not even firmly, just fully, like I was finally standing up. She opened her mouth. No words came out. So I gave her mine. "I'll leave you to your fairy tale." I picked up my clutch, adjusted the strap of my dress. "I'm heading back to mine." Her eyes followed me like I was walking out of a dream she didn't realize she wasn't part of. She didn't move. No apology, no witty comeback, nothing. There was nothing left to say. That's the thing about people who've lived too long in the center of attention. They don't know what to do when someone else quietly takes up space they thought they owned. I walked out without a single backward glance. No dramatic pause. No door slam. Just heels on tile, the soft rustle of silk, and the stunned silence of a room that finally saw me for what I was. Not invisible, not bitter, not competing, just done. Outside, the sun had started to dip, golden hour casting everything in honey and fire. The air smelled of jasmine and champagne. The photographer I'd hired caught a final shot of me as I crossed the courtyard, not posing, not smiling, just existing. When the photos were released, they'd caption me as a guest. Some wouldn't know who I was, some would ask, and some, the ones who had laughed, would remember exactly. But by then I'd be back in my penthouse. Feet up, glass in hand. My laptop is open to the next launch for my company. Because I didn't need their recognition. I didn't need their apology. I had already rewritten my own story. And in it I wasn't a side character. I wasn't comic relief. I wasn't anyone's understudy. I was the whole damn headline. I never blocked them. Not my sister, not my parents, not the cousins who once tagged me in the background of family photos, but never thought to say my name. I didn't block anyone, but I also never answered. The silence I gave them was not petty. It wasn't punishment. It was a boundary, the kind that doesn't need to be announced, only honored. After the wedding, a few relatives messaged me. "Where are you living these days? What do you do again? You looked amazing at the wedding. You're glowing. What's your secret?" I saw the messages. I let them sit, unread, unanswered, because suddenly they wanted to see me. But I wasn't interested in being visible on their terms. If they wanted to know where I'd been all those years, they could sit in the same silence I did, the one they were so comfortable letting me drown in. Let them wonder. Let them guess. That was never the power I wanted. But now that it was mine, I had no desire to use it. Now I live in Paris. A quiet flat near the Seine with white curtains that dance in the breeze and hardwood floors that creak when I pace at night. There's a bookstore across the street that knows me by name. The barista at the corner cafe sets down my espresso without asking. And not once, not once, not once, not once has anyone here called me the Maid. I walk the cobblestone streets alone, and I'm not afraid of the silence anymore. I fill it with music I love, words I write, and the sound of my name the way I say it, not the way they did. Sometimes I see wedding photos pop up in my feed. My sister still posts often. Flawless skin-sparkling gowns and choreographed laughter. Captions like, "Family over everything." I don't comment. I don't correct her. Let her keep her story the version that makes her feel complete. Let her crop and edit and filter until it all looks beautiful. She was always good at that. But I know better now. I know that family isn't a label you use to prop up your image. It's not a crown you wear when the camera's on. Family is not the place where someone calls you the maid and expects you to smile. Family. Real family doesn't make you smaller so they can feel bigger. It took me years to unlearn what they taught me. Years to stop confusing obedience with love. Years to understand that being quiet is not the same as being safe. I don't hate them. That would be too simple. Hate means you're still tangled, still emotionally invested, still circling the wound. I've let go. Not because it didn't hurt, but because healing isn't about pretending pain didn't happen. It's about refusing to let that pain become your language. So I speak something new now. Every time I choose not to reply. Every time I choose peace over applause. Every time I walk away when I'm tempted to explain. That's my fluency. There's something powerful about not needing to win. I didn't destroy her wedding. I didn't embarrass her in front of the guests. I didn't post screenshots or write think pieces. I simply walked away. And in doing so, I took more from that moment than revenge could ever give me. I took freedom. And if I've learned anything in these years since, it's this: closure isn't something they give you. It's something you claim quietly, deliberately, and without apology. Sometimes people ask me if I ever think of going back. To visit. To explain. To show them who I've become. And I smile because the truth is, if they couldn't see me, then they don't deserve the woman I am now. If you've ever felt like the background character in your own family, if you've ever been the one holding the camera, the coat, the door, if you've ever been laughed at and told to lighten up, if you've ever sat in silence swallowing your pride just to keep the peace, then maybe you know the real revenge isn't rage. It's release. It's letting go of the need to be acknowledged by people who only ever valued your absence. So tell me, what was your moment, the one where you finally stepped out of their shadow? I'm listening.